Hi everybody, we're going to take video notes from the 7th grade Common Core lesson 2.4. We're going to be multiplying and dividing rational numbers. We're going to apply all of the same rules that we learned in chapter 1 for integers and apply that to fractions and decimals. In example 1 and 2, we're going to be multiplying. In example 2, we're going to be dividing. At any point in the video, you need to start and stop to write anything down. I suggest you do that. Or watch the video, then go back and write it. Or write everything and then go back and watch without doing it. You need to find the best way to watch these videos. And if at any time you have questions, write your questions on the side, because when we do recaps, you'll have an opportunity to ask those questions. You can also email any questions to me after watching them for clarification. In example 1, I am multiplying a positive times a negative. My answer is going to be a negative because a positive times a negative is a negative. I'm going to do the actual math. When I multiply decimals, I simply multiply 32 times 52. I do not line up my decimal points. I have 4, 6. I'm now multiplying by 50. I add. In my original problem, I have 2 numbers behind the decimal point. So in my answer, I have 2 numbers behind the decimal point. My final answer is 16.64. I can also use estimation to help. I have about 3 times about -5. My answer is about -15, which is true. In example 2, I'm going to multiply again. A negative times a negative is a positive, so I know my answer is going to be positive. I'm going to multiply fractions by, this should be a multiplication symbol. I'm going to multiply fractions by changing them to improper fractions. 12, 13, 14, 15. Over 4, and then 4 plus 1 is 5 over 5/4. I go ahead and I can simplify nothing here. If I could, I can simplify diagonally or up on top to simplify prior to that. In this case, I cannot, so I have 75 over 16. I can leave that the way it is, or I can transfer it into an improper fraction. So I would accept 75/16, or 75 divided by 16, that's 32. I'm going to try 3, that's 18. Oh, not enough. I'm going to try 4, that's 24. 6, that works. So that'll be 4 and 4/16, which is not simplified. So it'll be 4 and 1/4. Let me make sure I did my math correctly. 4, 5, 6, subtract 11. 11, oh, should be 11/16. Okay. I would accept either one of those. A negative times a negative is a positive. Division, okay? I'm going to use the same rules for multiplication and division. It's the same thing. A negative divided by a negative, or a negative divided by a positive, my answer is going to be negative. And dividing decimals can look 2 ways. A 3rd grade division symbol, or it can be written as a fraction. Make sure you look for either way. For these problems, I'm going to have to do a long division, and I'm going to do that over here. I have 0.2, okay, into 4.25. So it's 4 and 25/100 divided by 2/10. I'm going to move my decimal point over because I cannot have a decimal point in the divisor. I'm multiplying both of them by 10, which is 1 place value. My new math problem looks like this. 42.5 divided by 2. These are equivalent expressions and will result in the same answer. 2 goes into 4 2 times. Bring down my 2. It goes in the 2 once. Bring down my 5. It goes into 5 twice. I have a remainder of 1. Can't have a remainder in decimals, so I add another number, 0. 2 goes into 10 5 times. I'm out of remainders. So I know my answer is going to be negative, because a negative divided by a positive is a negative, and it's negative 21.25. For this problem, I'm going to be dividing fractions. I have a negative divided by a negative, so my answer is positive. And when I divide fractions, I change it into an improper fraction, and I multiply by the reciprocal. So I have 16, 17, 18, 19/4 divided by 3/2. I'm going to rewrite that as 19/4 times 2/3. 2/4 is the same as a half. 19 times 1 is 19. 2 times 3 is 6. I can leave that as 19/6 because that is simplified. Or I can go ahead and simplify it into, I can change it into an improper or mixed number, which is 3 and 1/6. Negative divided by a negative is a positive. So we're using what we learned in terms of add, subtract, or multiplying and dividing fractions and decimals, and applying what we know from Chapter 1 with integer multiplication and division rules. When we do this, we need to make sure we're going back and checking our work. If at any point you had questions, make sure you're starting and stopping. Some of you may need to watch the video more than once. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.